with the holiday, it happens for us Americans. Um, this week, though, I want to talk about Bo Burnham's Inside, which is not like a super new thing, but since it's within the last 5 years, it's considered new, only for a little bit longer. So the thing about this is it comes from a Netflix special, a movie. I'm going to talk about the music as a whole, but there are things that you see in the movie that help you understand his creative process. So I'll touch on that as I go along. Um, it's not required to watch the movie to understand or to listen to his songs. He's a comedian musician, so there's not like a huge overarching story with his album. Not like Billie Eilish's, but they're funny. And if you watch the movie, you see some like essentially music video, and you do see him working on the songs at some point. So I do recommend going and watching it. It's on Netflix. They can't take it off. So um yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. This was um written, directed, filmed, edited, performed, produced, everything by Bo Burnham by himself in his tiny little apartment during the first COVID lockdown in 2020. So he was alone and he decided to do this project. So there's a lot that is funny about lockdown. There's a lot of things that we could all relate to about lockdown. There's also songs that note to the systemic issues that were happening in our country and around the world during lockdown, during the first in 2020. So it's very interesting to listen to, but then also watch. The Netflix special was released in May of 2021 because it took him a year. You got to do post production. And then the album itself was released in June of 21 by Republic Records. So the album is 2 discs. I'm going to focus mainly on the first one because the second one is very similar to the first with the synthesis processes. And I don't want this to be too long. Might actually be shorter. But released in May, film in May. Then the soundtrack album in June. And I had heard a couple of his songs off this. Some of my favorite ones are actually off of this. And I was just sitting in my car and heard one of them, and I was like, I should listen to it fully and like kind of watch the movie and see what it's all about, see what he did. Because there were songs that were trending on TikTok when it first came out. And, as I was studying synthesis and all that kind of stuff, music technology, it was fun to listen to someone release an album that was almost purely through a DAW, which was really nice. I mean, everyone has to record into a DAW, but like he had the pre-programmed sounds in his album. It was really fun. So DAW, I just mentioned that word. It is a digital audio workstation. He uses Logic Pro X. You can see that in the film. It's what I use. And I'll show you guys that in a little bit. He utilizes a couple things in his album. So within the DAW, not just recording but producing the sounds, he uses what's called a MIDI controller. MIDI stands for musical instrument digital interface. So he can program sounds to his keyboard and play a note, just like a keyboard like this, but smaller. He uses the M Audio Oxygen 49, which is what I use. So what he can do is he can program a sound to that key, or he programs the sound to the track, and it plays just like a regular keyboard. You have different octaves because it's only 49 key regular. Pianos are 88. Math, he can change the octave, and MIDI has more octaves than like a regular piano. Pretty cool. So you can make some really weird sounds. There's also things you can patch to it. There's faders and there's knobs and there's pads that you can use, and you can teach the MIDI controller to do what you want with them. So he utilizes that. He also uses a Yamaha P255 key keyboard, similar to this, not the same model, but this is a Yamaha and it is 88 key. because he plays just regular piano on some of his songs, and that would be when he utilizes this. For his performances, he also would use a Korg. I'm not going to get into the Korg, and he uses a melodica. He doesn't use that here. Or at least you don't see it. So his first one right out is called Content, and it's funny because he's talking about making content for people, and it comes in with a heavy bass and drums. And you don't see him writing this in the movie, but I would take it to assume how I would do it is the pads on the MIDI keyboard would be the drums. You would map the drums to it. And then he would play everything else on his piano. And he also does a lot of vocal layering. What he does then is he'll have to record his own vocals and, go through it. Probably record the backing track first, so you have something to sing along to. And you have to record every individual instrument. You can loop them. This one I can show you. This is something I'm doing. So all you do, these are your tracks. Okay. And these are all MIDI for me, but he would put, whatever he wants in there. And when I go, and I'm not going to get my keyboard set up, but bring out this little keyboard. There's my keyboard. If I play this, my sound library is missing. Let's just get, so he would add a new track. This is where you add a track. I'm going to do a MIDI. We're just going to do default. And now I have a classic electric piano. If I play a note on my keyboard, it plays in Logic. You can see it go boop. He would go and record whatever he wanted with whatever. So he used a bass and drums and then did a lot of vocal layering and probably had a bunch of other stuff in there. Maybe used alchemy. I'm obsessed with alchemy. But that's all he would do. Then he would go in and put in an audio track. And then when he's recording, as you see, I'm just speaking and it's picking me up. And he would record that over top everything. Then he would have to go and add a second audio track and go and record everything, all his backing. He would have to do that a couple times to get all those vocal layerings. And that's what he does for a lot of his songs. Whether he's using a MIDI or the Yamaha, he records into Logic because you can plug the piano into your computer, as long as it has MIDI controls, and you can still control it like a MIDI, but just have it play the sounds as long as it has what you need. So first up, Content, he did that. Very, very nicely done. Very funny. The second one is Comedy. This is where you can see him using the pre-recorded sounds on his Oxygen MIDI. And like he puts laughing tracks in there, which is really funny. And Comedy, haha. He also just plays piano on his Yamaha, which records directly into it. So he, you can record multiple tracks at the same time. So he can play his piano, record his voice, and hit the MIDI all at the same time. That's challenging, but you can. He seems to really enjoy live recording. I like doing command recording where I just hit my command button and I draw the notes because it's more precise. But he did that. He also did more layering with his vocals, obviously. It's probably going to be a very short episode, just warning. FaceTime with Mom is the next song, which I just think is funny because we all had to teach our parents FaceTime. We all had to teach them something, and it was fun to watch. It has a very early 2000s pop feel to it. He used a lot of echo and chorus effects. So the way you do that, when you go to, your little audio, you don't need to see any of this anymore. If you go to the mixer window, and you go to audio FX, you can go and you can find a chorus. And then you can change the rate with how quick it goes, the mix, how much do you want to hear, how intense it is. And then you can just hear the difference. I wonder if it'll actually let me record in here. So by me recording it, then you'll be able to hear, if I'm live changing it and everything. You'll be able to hear the difference as it plays. See? I don't actually know if you can hear that. If not, this is gonna suck. But you can do that. You can also do echo. I spoke about echo in Billie Eilish's. You go to delay, echo, and then it just gives you a nice little echo. So dry is kind of the same as the mix, dry versus wet. There's no echo. I make it all wet, no dry. You can make it faster. See, faster, feedback, all that kind of stuff. Very easy to learn and teach yourself. But that's really all he's doing. Not to say that's all he's doing, but to make it sound grander. I don't know if that's the word I want. He's just using effects on his vocals and his instrumentation. So that one was fun. How the World Works is the next one. He still utilizes his piano. He uses a drum track again. So you could either use the drum machine where you create it and it loops it, or you could use a drum set patch and hit the pads, like I said, and like one would be kick, one would be snare, one would be hi-hat, suspended cymbal, all that. And you can do that and record it yourself, or you could make it in the drum machine. I like using drum machine. You don't see which one he uses, unfortunately. He also uses an organ, which is fun. Wasn't bad like the one in the Billie Eilish album. I really didn't like. This one I knew, White Woman's Instagram. Very funny song. As a white woman who has an Instagram, I pride myself on what he talks about in his song I don't have. So I like this song a lot. Like I said, when the lyrics get serious, he kind of takes everything out. He, just has his lyrics and really basic instrumentation. Then when it's funnier, because there is a kind of serious note in there, which is interesting for this song. But it works too because of the way he builds the instrumentation. It's well done. This is very short today. Unpaid intern. He uses synthesis. He uses the DAW. He records it all in there on his MIDI keyboard, his Oxygen. Bezos 1. It's so synthesized and it's very popular. So a lot of people know that. He maps it to his MIDI and records his voice. This is basically what he does. And it's all you really can do when you're stuck somewhere. My tiny office, I have my keyboard, I have my MIDI controller, I have my computer, I have my microphones, I have a couple more over there. That's it. We don't have giant spaces. So that's what you need to utilize. You need to figure out a way to do it. And Logic Pro is a really good tool, especially because if you have something like Finale, which is just like a notation program, but it has built-in sounds because you need to have playback. You need to be able to hear what you're writing. You can put that into Finale flip. You can put Finale sounds, Aria Garriton, into Logic. You can put plugins. You can use a lot of different stuff. I have a Moog synth on my computer that I put into Logic. I have a program called Dext that in that song I showed. I utilize it. You can use whatever you want. It's really great. Highly recommend. Not telling the price. The next song, Sexting. It's really funny. And he uses a lot of reverb and delay. Reverb is, it makes it sound like you're in a bigger space, or maybe not a big space if you were in a big space. So it changes the sound of the room. Um, if you want it to sound like you're not in such a dry location, like this room is very dead, it's dry. My vocals don't normally sound good. My instruments don't normally sound good. So I put a tiny little bit of reverb on them for like an open room. And it sounds like I'm in a concert hall. And it's really nice. And he does that for Sexting, which is just funny because it's such an unserious song. Um, and it's such a smart technique to use. Look Who's Inside Again. You can actually, that's the song you can see his recording process on in the movie. You can see him sitting on the floor with his Oxygen and his Mac in front of him because Logic has to be used on Apple products. And he's just recording it. He uses an electric piano patch on the Oxygen, so it sounds like an electric piano, like an old-timey one. And he has clean vocals, just records straight through. Probably has a little bit of effects put on it, just because, like I said, the room is dead. Most rooms are dead. And then he went and added a drum track afterwards. So you can go, if nothing else, I recommend going and watching that scene. It's the 9th song on the album. I don't know where that would be in the movie. Didn't timestamp it. But it's really good to see his process on that. Problematic. He uses an 80 synth. I love 80 synths in Logic. They sound stupid. They sound fun. If you're doing well though, they work really great. He also uses drums again and an echo. I think we're noticing a pattern. The song 30, he uses an arpeggiator to open and then put them all in his DAW. So an arpeggiator, ARP, it's just a fancy way of saying like how the notes are played on the sound. Then you kind of get to disc 2. Like I said, I'm not gonna go too much into disc 2 as much. But almost dropped something. My bad. He uses a lot more of the synthesis again. Same thing. The song Don't Want to Know, pads and percussion. Pads are like ethereal sounding typically, and they're like sustained notes. So like think of putting your fingers all on the keyboard and putting the pedal down, the sustain pedal, and just letting it go. That's kind of what pads do, but they sound like mystical and ethereal and stuff. Song Shit, he uses lots of synthesis sounds with his acoustic tracks that he recorded into the DAW. So it works for the song because the song is funny, but also heavy. Like, it's a song where he's like, yeah, I feel like shit. Like, it's a lot going on in there. That's a very thick song. If that's what, like, I would expect, 10 tracks or so. Maybe not. That's just how I would do it. All Time Low, lots of arpeggiators. Welcome to the Internet. He comes back with the Yamaha and some more acoustic tracks. But then he also does use synthetic sounds. It also sounds like he uses field recordings. A field recording is basically you take a sound that you have recorded outside, and it not necessarily outside like in nature, but like outside of your studio, your recording studio, your DAW, and you put it in your DAW. You can map it to your MIDI keyboard and you can change the pitch and everything, and you can put effects on it, or you could just leave it as is and make like an ambient sound. I used to do a lot of field recording projects in college, where mine wasn't so much turning those sounds into music, but more making it an ambient space. That's what I feel like he did a little bit. But at the same time, he also used it to the music's advantage. So a good field recording test is like my cat meowing at the door. I could go and record him, put it into my computer, map it to my keyboard, and make him, instead of going meow, I could go meow 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 meow, and like, it's like the there's my example. Is it the Friskies commercial? Meow Mix? I don't know. It's like the one with the NSYNC guy. It's like doing that, but without him. Making cats meow in different ways. A little off topic. But the rest are Bezos too. Similar to Bezos. Leads right in from Welcome to the Internet. That funny feeling is really raw. It's like completely, oh no. Just the way he records it is interesting because you can tell he puts a lot, like, I don't know how I want to say any of this. He sounds raw, but then he produces it all very nicely. So he uses a guitar and has to record that, and that's acoustic. But then there's a lot of ambient sounds in there, and there's a lot of production you can hear going on into the sounds of his singing and guitar playing. And it's very bare. It's very good. All Eyes on Me. Go listen to it. That one. Goodbye. Oops. I clicked something on my phone. Apologies. Is acoustic again, I think, because of the way he ended it. He talks about in the movie how he doesn't want to end the project. And we all, as artists, go through that. Any artist goes through that, where you work so hard on a project, you don't want to finish it because then it's finished and you're like, I don't know what to do anymore. So that's kind of what Goodbye feels like. That's one reason he produced it the way he did, is because he talked about how he didn't want to end it. So just something nice, clean ending. I really recommend listening to this. Like I said, it's not new. It's not like released today new, but within the last 5 years is still considered new. And it's really good, like, intro to Logic, I feel like. If you ever wanted to get into synthesis, there are free, like I said, Logic costs money. There are free programs out there, and you have to have a MacBook or, some kind of Apple product to utilize Logic, because it is Apple. So you can get anything to start doing the synthesis, but his album is a really good one to listen to first and get an idea of how it works and what you could potentially do with it. And it's just playing around, and you too could be like Bo Burnham. So I just really like this album because of how heavy it is in synthesis and in Logic Pro X, which is my preferred DAW. Yeah, like I said, short episode today. Didn't realize how short it was. I guess because his songs are very similar to each other. That I went away. His songs are very similar to each other because he uses all the same techniques. There's not a lot of differentiation. My partner even said that. He's like, yeah, his music sounds all the same. I'm like, yes. He's using a lot of the same stuff. My music a lot sounds the same, but he has a sound. And when you hear it, it's Bo Burnham. It's going to be funny. You know what it is. So anyway, thank you for joining me this week. Try to post more regularly. I'm not sure what I'm going to review for next week. Maybe something like really, really modern, like some of the stuff that just came out, like BBNO $. I don't know if that's actually how you say his name, but his new song, it's not new. It's like 2 weeks old. Synthesized. So maybe I'll just go through and find a bunch of songs like that. So thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment on what you would like to hear next, and let me know if you yourself also use Logic Pro X. Bye, guys.